Hello.
Hello everyone. Good morning for those who are joining us live in Australia. It's morning. I think it's evening elsewhere.
Do the tech thing quickly.
Do the tech thing. Today we're talking about blame, shame and guilt in our parenting. I think that's a pretty universal thing, that we have moments where we don't show up the way we want to, that we lose our cool or whatever happens, we get triggered. And then we're swamped with blame, shame and guilt as a result of us, what we consider screwing up. Yeah?
Yes. And that blame, shame and guilt is something that's pretty heavy, and you carry it around, and it's actually can be like a burden, and it can actually, I know it doesn't feel good already, but it's something that
really messes with your energy.
And makes it so much harder to, even though we think that, it's kind of conditioned into us that we can shame ourselves into something different. I just did something really bad. I need to change it, so I need to whip myself into changing. It actually doesn't do that. Yeah, no. Totally.
So the mechanisms of blame, shame and guilt have been in our culture and in our cultural collective on the planet for hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of years. And they're actually all about control. They're control mechanisms. So initially, externally, when people blame, shame and guilt someone, they're trying to control them. They're trying to create a specific result from that person when they do that. And we've grown up with that generationally for a long time. And these are now internalized. These are internal mechanisms in ourselves. So effectively, a little part of you, one piece of you, is beating up on another piece of you, another aspect of you. So the part of you that's tired and lost the plot and feels like no one cares about them and their needs are never being met, who had a tantrum and lost the plot. And the other part of you who is like, whoa, this is not okay to speak to my children like this, and blah, 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 and starts beating up on the other part of you, yeah, and blame, shaming, and guilting, because you're trying, or that part of you is trying to get you, trying to control you to show up a different way. Yeah.
But the thing is, it doesn't actually work. It doesn't work at all. What it does do is it helps you to put on a particular mask, which actually entrenches that whole I'm not safe to show my full self kind of thing. It means that you don't feel safe to express when you've lost it, or when you've done something that feels shameful. It means you need to hide it even more from people. It successfully entrenches and controls you into wearing a particular mask of I've got it all together, I don't screw up. But then when people aren't watching, when your guard's let down, when you're at home just with your loved ones, it'll keep happening. It's just pushing it below the surface.
Yeah, the further you push it down, hoping that it's not going to come out. And it's why so many of the mothering communities online are failing to truly support women, because we're all terrified we're going to be judged if we say, I lost the plot and screamed at my kids.
Yeah, I hit my child.
Yeah, that is biggest taboo, no. And so that whole piece we hide, and it's all missing from being able to be really supported and held through that. Because there is a way through that. The way through that is not to squish it all down. So when you squish these sides of yourself down, and in the psychological world, these parts that we feel are not okay, that we're so ashamed of, that exist within us,
that we wish we could cut away.
Yeah, we call them shadows. So the more we push our shadows down and hide them from the world, squash, squash, hide, a lot of things are happening. But if you think of it as a beach ball analogy, which is a really beautiful analogy for this, try hold a couple beach balls under the surface of the water. Okay, and you're keeping them all pushed down. No one can see them. They're there. They're under there. I used to do this as a kid in the pool. You hold them all down, you've got them all, and you've got kind of one on your leg and one pushed down here. And then at some point, you get distracted, you get tired, get stressed out somehow, and you lose your focus. You lose all the energy and intention you're putting on keeping them all under the surface, and they spring up. And the more pushed down under the water they are, the more violently and like dramatically they whoosh to
chaotically
to
out of control.
Yeah, to the surface. It's because you're trying to submerge all these pieces. It's also sending a really terrible message to yourself. There is a part of you that is hurt and in need, and the more you suppress them and squash them down and put them in a cupboard, lock the door, say, yep, you got to stay there because you are totally unacceptable. No one can ever see you. It actually is a really terrible thing a message to be sending to parts of yourself, and it's nearly always younger parts of yourself. It's horrible for self-esteem, it's horrible for self-love. It's a shocker, really.
It is, and going even one step further, like firstly, self-love needs to include every single part of you, especially including the parts that you find impossible to love.
And we get that feels hard when we first say that.
Yeah, it needs to include all of you. But then even one step further, and I totally understand, we were talking about this, like this seems so far for some people who are kind of at the beginning of this, but you will discover, if you continue with this work, that not only are these parts of you and these these shadows needing love, underneath them and connected to them, when they're made conscious, when they're embraced, when they're loved, they can actually become some of your greatest gifts.
They actually hold a lot of wisdom, those shadows. They're actually holding unresolved bits in you, bits that are stopping you from feeling whole. They're going to create more wholeness when they're brought to the light. And when the shadow is brought to the light, it transforms into a healthier conscious expression of it.
Yeah.
Okay, so we're not telling you that the gift is in the yelling or the screaming or the whatever it is. The gift is lying under all of that.
Yeah, I have a little story around that, because Lisa and I have this process that we share with mothers called the Mother's Creed, and it's about getting really clear on your unique values, the values that are the essence of how you want to show up as a mother. And I did that process, I guess, on one side of fully delving into shadow work. And it was beautiful, but my Mother's Creed was quite lopsided. It involved a lot of like unconditional love for my children and all the things that I wanted to give to them, a lot of giving energy. And then I would not always show up like that, and I'd give myself a hard time. I'd feel shame about not being always unconditionally loving. And then doing some shadow work around the part of me that totally loses it and is like rages at my children and becomes like a crazy woman, I discovered that underneath that, she holds the strong boundary setter, like the empowered woman who won't take any shit from anyone. And that's actually a part of my Mother's Creed as well. That's also a part of my values. And when I can bring that in, like be an unconditionally loving mother as well as being a strong woman who fully loves herself and like
you can lead from a place of integrity and boundaries.
Totally. Then I'm so much more powerful, empowered, and I also I parent with the fullness of me. And also I have gotten to the point with that where I don't have to have so much shame around the crazy woman. So the crazy woman is not so crazy anymore. She's more just empowered and congruent and no, I won't take any shit kind of thing. So she's transformed because I've found her gifts.
So when you still like lose it at your kids, and there's that initial, before you move into a loving space, there's that initial shame, blame or guilt piece happening there. What is the crazy woman? She's not the crazy woman. I don't know what you've called her now. The empowered woman. What is going on for her? Why is she popping up? What's the need underneath it?
She's saying, I matter too, which is very, very important.
Yeah. Okay, so that's actually such a hugely common dynamic for, specifically for mothers who are wanting to parent with a very conscious, attached, connected sort of philosophy. That's what they're going for. They want all this loving, generous energy. And they're usually very peaceful women. Like, they really value peace and harmony and cooperation. And they want to bring that all to mothering. And so they really squash down anything that's not that from a very early on time in their children. Usually when their children are babies, it starts right at the beginning. And it's really interesting because with that, they also tend to go through an exploration of letting go of arbitrary boundaries, whatever that looks like. Well, why can't my children get dirty in the mud? And, well, why can't, if my children want that freedom to blah, blah, blah. And so they start to play and explore with letting go of boundaries, arbitrary boundaries, which I did, you did.
Absolutely.
Lots of us do. And that's actually a healthy piece, to let go of some of our conditioning around boundaries. If we're striving for that type of parenting, then that is a totally valid journey to be taking. But in the process, we often, as those types of mothers, we lose ourselves and our boundaries altogether over the first few years of our children's life. And when they hit 3 or so and they're really testing boundaries, that's normal for them to do that, really comes to the forefront for us again. It's like, I have no idea how to bring myself back into this relationship, and how do I make it clear that I matter too, and oh my God. And
that's when all the explosive stuff comes out.
And that's where those shadows that we suppress and push down, like, get triggered and beach balls fly.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's really common. So if that is you, know that that's a really common dynamic.
So we're inviting you, next time you do something that habitually you want to blame, shame and guilt yourself around, something that you just go, oh, I don't want to do that. I don't want anyone to know that I do that. That just feels so wrong, feels so yucky. I'm a terrible person,
I've screwed up my kids. I'm damaging my kids by doing this. How could I possibly have done that? Yeah.
The first thing to do is to practice loving yourself in that, in all of it.
Sorry, we thought we had a comment on the other machine. It dinged at us.
And yeah, just remember that in order to fully love yourself, you also need to love the parts that you find hardest to love. And it can help in doing that. It can help to a couple of things. One, to tune into what the needs are underneath, because there's always valid needs. And most of the time, there's a really young part of you that has just kind of come up and started. Like, whenever I have lost it at my kids, in hindsight, I look and go, wow, I was being a kid with them. Like that.
Just getting down on their level.
And that young part of you has valid needs. So tuning into what the needs are helps you to have compassion and love for yourself.
And a teenage part of you too. Like, that's a younger part of you. It might not be quite a child, but totally often coming up. And it's easier, certainly for me, it's easier to identify that part in me and offer that part love. Like, that is a really easy pathway for me to show compassion for myself.
Yeah. And another thing to remember is it is a universal truth that all those different things that you see out in the world and that you can judge in other people and that you can judge in yourself are a part of you. Like, we all have the myriad of human experience inside us. And the more that we deny that, and the more that we want to, like, go, no, that's not me, and cut bits away, the more they persist. You've probably heard that saying, what you resist persists. The more they'll just keep sneaking up like beach balls. So being okay with being all of it,
Yep.
with being violent. It doesn't mean it's the whole of you, but the potentials inside of you. Being lazy, all those judgments. Being okay with them being a part of you.
And there are actually a lot of shadows that are very universal for mothers. And Kay and I have often talked about doing a series on the shadows of the mother, because we see them all the time. The lazy mother, the rageful mother, the impatient mother. There's some ones out there that are so
The
common.
neglectful mother.
Oh, yeah. There are so many, and we all hold them. We all hold them. And they're destructive in their unconscious state. When they are pushed down and not brought to the light, yeah, they'll explode in ways that you are like, oh, God, I wish it didn't come out like that. When you bring them to the light and work with them and move into relationship with them, you integrate them, and the continuum of it, so the quality of it becomes a positive expression and adds to your wholeness. Sounds weird when we're saying like this. The first time I did shadow work, I came out of it feeling so bloody liberated and empowered. I was like, oh my God, I feel amazing. Like, you have to experience it to understand it. And sometimes that's really hard in a Facebook Live format. That's not the best format to do that in. And maybe Karen and I will offer something around this, and you should come and hang out in space with us.
Well, yeah. We actually are soon
We
going
are
to
soon.
open up a program that we will tell you more about in other lives, but inside that we'll totally provide, because you need safe space to do shadow work. It's pretty
not
hard to,
it's not hard or really difficult, but you need to feel safe to do it.
If someone else starts shaming, blaming and guilting you, it just can entrench the blame, shame and guilt of yourself. So you need someone else to hold you in love in order to find that for yourself.
And it's such a liberating, empowering, and it creates a lot of wholeness in you. So really invite you to do it. But for today, we do have a sort of a self thing that you can do.
Yeah. So the key main part is finding love, practicing compassion and love for yourself in all of it, in the shadows, in the ways of showing up that you have previously felt blame, shame and guilt around, that you've habitually just kind of sent yourself in a yucky spiral of regret around. Finding the needs underneath is a really big part of that, and also remembering that it's all in you, and practicing, like I've practiced with anything that if there's any label that you find hard to say, if you could say if violent is the label, and you practice saying I am violent, or a part of me is violent, and when you say that you kind of go, ooh, I don't want to say that, then that's a signal that that's a shadow. And practicing claiming that it could be violent, it could be neglectful, it could be lazy, it could be anything, it could be greedy. There's so many possibilities, but practicing claiming that as a part of you until it holds no charge, until it's just like, this is a part of me and that's okay. That's a part of integrating the shadows.
Yeah. And another piece, which I don't think we were going to do, but I feel like we should do it now, is around finding the gifts in your shadow. And that can be really tricky. The reason we weren't going to do it is when we've taught it in a not, like, where we can't interact with people really clearly, people get really like, there is no gift in this.
And
like,
it always is.
It's hard for them to find. But if you could think of if you take it back to the energy of this shadow, and you allowed it to come to the light and thought of its most positive expression in you, the energy of it. And look what's there, because what Kaya found was her boundaries got created in her parenting, and well, you tell the story. What did you find?
Well, I couldn't connect to my strong, clear...
Alison. Yay.
Hello.
So nice to see you on here, honey.
I couldn't connect to my boundaries until I embraced my rage and anger. So rage and anger are kind of on the same spectrum as boundaries.
It's being empowered.
Yeah, like it's actually, and the way someone described it to me is the volume's turned up so loud that it kind of drowns everything else out. So I could just turn the volume down on the rage and anger and then claim the boundaries, claim the empowered, no shit-taking woman. But I couldn't do that without embracing the anger and rage. So there's all those shadows have a whole other aspect to them on the same spectrum.
Yeah.
When the volume's turned down.
Yeah, so you want to go to the energy of the shadow, the feel of it, and bring it up to the light and ask yourself, what is the most positive expression of this? Because there will be something in it that is positive for you, and that when you integrate that, when you allow yourself to take that on in its positive expression, you'll become more whole, you'll feel more whole, and you will bring that to your children.
Oh, yes.
In a beautiful way, in a truly beautiful way.
Thank you so much for all your thumbs up, Alison. They're so beautiful.
They are beautiful. They make you feel so good.
They do. They like lift me up.
Yeah. What else is in our outline for today? If anyone's got a question, totally, this is the live format. This is the place for it. Ask away, because we are
and
here.
And ask when you're on replay as well. We'll check it. Oh, the hearts too. Oh, I think that's it. So what we're saying is when you do something that that you have previously been ashamed of, do those things that you go, oh, I just don't want anyone to know that I did that. I royally screwed up.
And you're shaming and guilting yourself about it, like, I am a crap mother.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Find a way to give that part of you love. The whole of you needs love, especially those parts that you have possibly never given love before.
And if that feels really tricky, look for it as a part of you. It's going to probably, not always, but probably be a younger part of you, a teenager or a younger child who has some serious unmet needs going on in that moment. And that is a way easier place to feel compassion, particularly for a mother. Yeah?
And remember that every single human has all of it inside us.
Yeah.
The more that we can be okay with that and integrate it, the more control we have over how we express it. It doesn't become a
beach ball.
Unconscious. Yes, a beach ball. Totally.
The beach ball. If you went at the beginning.
Listen to the beginning to understand the beach ball.
Yeah. So I don't have human kids, but I have dogs and a very demanding inner child. Yeah. Yeah. And I also have a dog, and I can relate. Yep, absolutely.
And shadow work applies to any interactions we have with the world.
Yeah.
Any judgment we have of ourselves, we can love that part of us. Any blame, any shame, any guilt.
Yeah. And the integration of our shadows is a huge key to creating wholeness within us. It's like a really important piece, and it's important not to, particularly as mothers who have a really high standard for how you want to parent your children, how you want to show up. You have a vision in your head of who you want to be as a mother. I've never met a mother yet who hasn't carved off a whole heap of themselves, shoved them into boxes somewhere and said, they don't come into play. No, this has nothing to do with the way I'm going to be in front of my children. And those bits that you lock away in the closet and throw away the key, they become the beach balls that you're holding under the water. They become the ones that take all the energy and effort to keep them pushed under the surface. And when you get tired and overwhelmed and stressed and you lose your focus, they're going to fly up crazy, like not how you want them to come to the surface. There's no control in that. Okay?
So that the way to transformation is through loving them.
Yes. Love is always the answer. Always. Whether it's your children or yourself, it's always the answer. It's the way to come back to. And you know what? Those shadows, they don't have to be in the moment ones. The in the moment ones will be right there in your face. But you know what? I've had I'm sure you have too, many conversations with mothers, and they'll say, just, they're not even triggered. There's nothing on. They say, yeah, I'm a terrible mother. I am so impatient with my kids and I can't play with them at all. Like, they just start listing them all out straight away. Shadows. Yeah. So you might be feeling like that too. There might be the way you describe yourself as a mother.
Thank you, Alison.
Thanks, Alison. The way you describe yourself as a mother may well indicate lots of shadows there for you too. Yeah. And it is the positive expressions of those. Sit with that, because that's sometimes a hard idea. What the hell is the positive expression in this? Take the energy of it and say, well, if this came up for me in its most positive expression, what would it be? And then you'll find a way to integrate.
We'd love to know how that goes for you.
We would. And keep checking in on our page. We're doing tons of lives at the moment. We've got an amazing workshop coming up that will be huge and is interactive and a full guided process, and there will be space to ask lots of questions on that. And we will be launching a program that's coming up, which is new for us, but we want to offer something at a completely different way to some of our high-end coaching that we usually do. And this will still have the space for you to come and do a ton of laser coaching with us, to interact with us, to ask your questions, to be with us. Not quite face-to-face, but you know what I mean.
Like
live in real time. And those are great spaces to work with us on shadows. Yes. And you will come away flying high. It's a very empowering experience to do. Okay. I don't know, I think I'm done unless there's questions, but I don't think so today. It's a quiet crew today. But if you're on replay and you've got questions, we are keeping on top of all the comments and replying. So if you're on replay, ask a question, share an insight, and we'll definitely get back to you. Okay, I think that's it for today.
Yeah. See you.
Bye-bye.
Shadow embracing.